So welcome to the next episode of Growth Ripples. It's with great pleasure that I'm actually joined today by Ashley Amber Sava, who joins us all the way from the US. So Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be on. It's good to actually meet you in video life.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that don't know Ashley, she's quite prolific on LinkedIn and other sort of areas. She's actually going to be opening her own podcast shortly, which I'm sure is going to be great. And one of the things that gravitated me towards Ashley was actually a lot of what she was writing about workplaces, that can be quite toxic. And I think we've had some shared experiences there. So what we wanted to share with people today was a bit of a discussion about some of those awards that you may see around great places to work, and sometimes they have other names. But we've had experiences in these kinds of companies, and friends have as well. So given, Ashley, you came up with this kind of topic, maybe if I could just get you to share what was it about this topic that sort of made you want to talk about it today?
Yeah, I have found a pattern with companies that basically get nominated or awarded these things often with when people leave the company, them having feedback on how pressured they felt to answer surveys positively, how they were even asked to do them almost monthly. They had to enter nominations like pretty much every month at a lot of these big companies to make sure that they got named as often as they could. It doesn't lend itself to a lot of authenticity when you tear it apart a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny that you talk about it in that way, because, one of the last organizations I worked for in HR, they were actually using Great Places to Work for quite some time. And what we noticed, a very similar pattern to what you're describing, is there's this internal and often external pressure to just give the best ratings in order to get the best awards. And we won it one year, yet there was still so many areas of improvement, particularly around the culture, particularly around how leaders were leading people. Is that what you found as well, Ashley?
Oh, definitely. I find that anything where you have to pay to play has a little bit of a negative connotation as well. With these things, you have to think of the fact that when you enter a lot of the competitions, you pay hundreds of dollars for your application. And then after that, there is usually some kind of element of a survey that has to be completed in X amount of time. That becomes quite redundant when you're doing them every month as an employee at one of these locations. And you're definitely, at least in my situation, you feel pressured to give positive feedback. They don't tell you that they can tell, and maybe they can't, who answered each question. But I've found that people who answer negatively kind of have a little bit of payback later on. At least I have heard in the inner circles that a lot of these are not quite as anonymous as you're believing.
Absolutely. It's a huge risk, isn't it? I mean, and trust needs to be the cornerstone of any of these kind of surveys. I think the other bit to it is, in such a talent, low supply sort of and high demand area of talent, often these surveys and these awards are used in order to kind of help with recruitment and to get people in the door. But really, they don't paint a true balanced perspective at all. Like, from your perspective, how do you think these could be improved?
I think that if we actually focus more on making culture better and not getting patted on the back for it, that would help.
Yeah.
I don't think that it matters if you get nominated for any of these things. I think it matters how the people in the culture actually feel. And if we put the energy that we do into these kind of outward PR kind of recognitions, if we put that energy into actually investing in people and making them feel psychologically safe to, come to you if things are not going well, instead of making them feel like if they're not answering positively all the time that they're not being a team player, which is how you feel at a lot of the big organizations that do that.
Yeah, I mean, that resonates hugely. I mean, that whole psychological safety and trust is so key. And I think if organizations are spending more time and money on purely doing these Great Places to Work surveys, what they're actually missing out on is the feedback, and they're sending a message that we don't really value your constructive feedback. All we want to hear is how great we are so that we can continue to, talk about how great we are in the media or to candidates, but actually we're not interested in improving what it's like for you as an employee.
It's a giant loop. I actually have a friend who was at one of those organizations locally where I live in Austin. The company was getting nominated all the time, pretty much every year. They were getting at least in the top 10 top places to work in Austin. What happened was she was a loyal employee. She had been there quite a while, and she decided that she wanted to look for a different kind of a job into the company. And she wouldn't even be changing departments to do that. What she was going to do was she would be under the same management, but she was going to take on a different kind of position. And the person she reported to was pretty far along in her pregnancy when she went to her with this. And she kind of let her believe that when she came back from leave, that she would allow her to go and out and pursue this different kind of a job. And well, so she let her cover her duties while she was on her maternity leave. So for 90 days, give or take, she was doing a lot of extra work like you do when somebody goes out. And they had asked her in the meantime, before this person came back to the job, for her to basically find a replacement for herself. And she did. And she had them all lined up to go when her manager got back from maternity leave. And then a couple of days after she got back from leave, they called her into the office, and she thought she was going to get a promotion, and they let her go. And she had basically hired her own replacement. They had never intended to do anything with her in the new job. They just wanted to basically get her to shut her mouth. That way they wouldn't have to look for more help while her manager was on leave.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And I guess, unfortunately, in the US, that's fairly legal to do, right? With the at-will employment legislation and what have you.
It's shady and awful. But yeah, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's terrible to hear. I mean, do you get a sense in the States, because like at least from outside of America, it sounds like there's some more movement about greater protections for employees. Do you get a sense that any of this is moving, or is it, too far away? Or
I feel like we have, because of that at will thing, that a lot of the things that people want to do are not able to happen yet. There are things that I find a lot with my friends who are from marginalized backgrounds, that they have had things happen at the job and they're told to shut up about them or look for a new job, because if you don't like it here, then you can leave. And there's just not a lot you could do with at will employment when bad things happen, unfortunately. And it's tough to prove a lot of the things that they're talking about, because if you don't have the camera on when they happen, like it's almost like you get gaslit when you talk about it. Like that didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's so expensive. Yeah. I can imagine. And I imagine in the States as well, from what I've read, it's just so expensive if you want to take litigation against an employer or a boss that's treated you unfairly.
You'll be upside down in fees before you can even do anything about it. And that's if you're able to do anything about it at all. If you don't come from a lot of money, or if you just don't have anything to get you by into the minute, you're just going to put yourself in a bad financial situation. And I think that a lot of people can't afford to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm slightly like in Australia, I feel slightly more protected that there's a few more sort of legal precedents, but at the same time, I feel like we are following more of the US model about, how litigious things get and then how costly. And like you just said, unless you come from money, it's very hard to get justice. And at the moment, I've been looking a lot into class actions and, employees taking their employers, to town, so to speak, trying to anyway with the court system. But it gets more and more expensive, and most people, it's just prohibitive for them to actually take any action. So it must be even worse in the States, I imagine.
Yeah, I feel like anybody I know who had anything bad happen, even I have friends who have been sexually harassed by their own manager, and they can't do anything about it. They don't have enough evidence of it, and they didn't do their due diligence. So they go and they try to do what they can do, and then they find out that they don't have enough to actually get these people. And then the people who did what they did to them, nothing happens to them, and they continue to get promoted at their organizations and probably do it to other people coming in.
Yeah, I know it's terrible because they know they can get away with it. And I don't know if this is the same in the States, but in Australia, you can't legally record a conversation unless both parties agree to it. So it can kind of create this, even if you've got a recording of something that was said that was not right, it can be illegal
Yeah.
if that both parties haven't agreed to it, which is I can agree at one level, but on the other level, victims are the ones who miss out in these kind of scenarios.
It is. I have a friend who had a situation where she accidentally got whiffed of a conversation that was happening about her between her manager and another employee. They were on a Zoom call and he shared his screen and there was a little chat bot that came up and it
Right.
was only up there for a couple of seconds, but it was enough compromising evidence of what they
Yeah.
were talking about in that little chatbot on Zoom. And he, minimized
Mm.
it quickly and didn't think that she had paid attention to it at all. But she didn't even have time to take a screenshot of it or a photo or anything.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then when she went to bring it up to HR, they were like, well, we can't do anything with that accusation because you don't have anything. You don't have anything
Yeah.
there. And I feel like when it comes to platforms like Slack, I think that they could investigate the chat because don't they own all of the content on there?
They
But
should
they
do. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's whether they want to. And having worked in HR in lots of different companies, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that will go in to bat and protect the ones with the power and the money. And of course, that's the people at the top. And if they're condoning or even, just turning a blind eye to inappropriate behavior, of course, it's just going to continue. So I think unless we shine the light on these kind of behaviors, it's not going to change. And that's why I was also so excited to hear about your future podcast. Maybe if you want to take just a moment or two just to share what that's about.
Yeah, it's going to be called Unpopular Opinion. I'm kind of going at the LinkedIn engagement tactic that people are using now, where they unpopular opinion the top of their post, and then usually the take that they talk about is not that hot of a take. It's pretty safe generally. Like
Yeah.
my funny example is marketers should talk to customers. It's like, no, duh. Of course they
Yeah,
should.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're, they want you to click on it and, keep going. The
Yeah.
idea behind mine is kind of giving a platform for people who have genuinely unpopular opinions, but have taken them and made themselves something in professionally. Even
Great.
though people told them that they couldn't do it that way, or that if they went
Yeah.
about it that way, that they wouldn't have any luck or they wouldn't have any engagement or support, whatever that is. And
Yeah.
I find that a lot of the best leaders are people who kind of took the path less traveled by.
Yeah. Awesome. When's it going to be available for people to listen to?
Yeah, it should be available at the top of 2023. I
Awesome.
am
Yeah.
January, hopefully.
Yeah.
Week number 2 is my goal to get everything
Okay,
up.
great, great. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I mean, I definitely like, I think we talked about it before, but the whole contrarian truths and looking at things because, there's so much out there that people just take as gospel, but actually, if you challenge it and look at some of those uncomfortable truths or contrarian truths, there's so much out there that's actually a whole lot of BS. And I think the one that I often like talking about, and I think, you've got the American dream, we have the Australian dream, which is, everyone wants to own their home and everyone wants to, you can make it like in America and New York, it's all about anyone can make it. But the uncomfortable truth or the contrarian truth is, it depends how far along. Like, yeah, sure, there's examples of people have come from nothing to achieve greatness, but that's the exception. It's actually the people who started with money, started with certain privilege, whether it's white privilege, whether it's other privilege. I mean, it's all there, but it's very uncomfortable and people don't really want to talk about it.
People don't actually usually feel comfortable with anybody disagreeing with them, I think is the issue. There are not that many people who can actually tell you that they enjoy that. Even if they like a good debate, it gets very personal, I think. And I'm just kind of over everything being an echo chamber. I go on
Yeah.
LinkedIn and a lot of the content on there feels like an echo chamber. And it feels like people just copy and paste what everybody else is talking about and put their name on it. And that's the thing that we have to pay attention to. And I don't think that
Absolutely.
that's how you get any progress going.
Absolutely. And I think the algorithms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, it's all based on that echo chamber that you talk about. So you keep getting views that reinforce your own beliefs. And I often have to remind myself, so many people agree, Ashley's agreeing with what I think, and, Bob down the road's agreeing. But then when I have to reflect, it's like, the algorithm is just giving me people that already agree with my point of view. So, I think anything that can disrupt that is very powerful, and we need a certain level of dissent and a certain level of respectable debate. Because otherwise, like you say, we don't progress. We just keep getting into the same loops over and over.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what's happening now. I mean, I think that when there is a quote unquote hot take that might be a little bit different, if it actually becomes anything, it's not long before that becomes the next echo chamber. People have to have like enough buy-in and from other people before they feel comfortable, like going, maybe I can talk about that now. But they're letting other people kind of like test the waters before they want to put their own feet in on it.
Absolutely. Actually, sorry, what's that?
A little bit of confirmation bias, I think.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's interesting you talk about wait to see before, and once it's comfortable, because reflecting on, and we've talked about this before, like on LinkedIn, I post a lot about things that I've seen that are not appropriate and need to be called out. And I find a lot of people that either used to work there or continue to work there, they support me privately and say, Jan, I think what you're doing is great and I encourage you. However, publicly, they are not willing to put their name to anything like that, which is fine. I get it. They want to protect themselves. But I think it's a bit disappointing in that unless we all stand up and have that groundswell, people are going to continue to get away with what they get away with because people don't speak up.
I think that is it. And that is why when I did my anonymous workplace story thing, I did that for about a month, and I've done it a few times now. I got maybe 2 people in the 50 of them that I interviewed that were willing to put their name on it. Like that was because they feel like they're going to be attacked, or that people are going to come after them, like with litigation, or that they're not going to be able to find a job because other people will look at that and be like, oh, well, they're going to talk bad about my company if they're calling out another one. But why, as a company, are you fearful of that? Is it because you're doing shady things? Like, I don't know. I think we need to look at everything a little bit different.
I completely agree. I mean, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but, one of the things with my business, I started this consulting business, and one of my key tenets is if any business is uncomfortable by me calling out my past employers and behaviors that weren't appropriate or legal, then I'm fine with them choosing not to work with me, because to me that says, well, why is it, like you just said, why are they uncomfortable by me calling a truth out and sharing a reality? Now, I'm not going to do it to people willy-nilly. I only do it when it's actually got some truth to it. So, I think as long as people are doing things for the right reasons, you'll gravitate and you'll attract people with the same kind of mindset and the same kind of, energy, if you want to get a bit esoteric on it.
Well, and even when you talk about these, like going back to the top places to work companies, a lot of what is happening in them, even if you're not externally being negative, they don't even want any like discussion internally happening.
Oh, yes.
I had a company that we had an all hands meeting one time, and there had been a little bit of, irritation among the team for letting a few people go that we didn't think should have been. And the meeting got going by the founder of the company, basically telling everybody, if you don't like what's going on, then that's the door. You can leave. We don't need any non-team players talking. And then it's like, okay, so you don't want your culture to get better. You just want it to look good, or you just want everybody to be happy all the time.
And that toxic positivity doesn't help anyone either. And I think, if we truly want to get better and we truly want to be the best company out there, then that takes continuous improvement. We never get there. It's like it's a lofty goal that you can always aim for, but unless you keep striving, you'll never get there.
I think getting that locked down in people's minds, like you don't have to be at the top of an arbitrary list. You just have to keep doing better for the people. And eventually things will actually get better. It won't just be a thing that you could put on your webpage that might make you look good, or it might make you feel good, even though it isn't authentic. Like it isn't about that. It's about the people.
And I think with COVID and, all the lockdowns around the world, I think with people, there's this talk about the quiet quitting, and whether that's true or not, I think doesn't really matter. But I think there is a real shift in terms of people gravitating more and more to leaders and organizations that are vulnerable and say, look, we're not perfect, but this is kind of what we're doing to get better. And if you keep giving us feedback, we'll get better. And I think people that have worked in companies that they do this on a regular basis, they don't want to leave, even if they're not that paid at the top of the market. They want to stay there because they actually feel like they're being heard. They actually feel like their opinion matters. And I think that's where the opportunities for organizations and leaders to differentiate themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, who wouldn't want to be in that environment over the one that maybe is on the top of a magazine, but isn't that pretty when you get in there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, actually, I'm just looking at time. I mean, it's been a pleasure, and I think we're coming up to time, but I'd love to have you on the show again at some point. And I really wish you all the best for your upcoming podcast. Really looking forward to listening to it myself.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're going to be a good listener for me. And thank you for talking about it. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you, Ashley.